Alright, so today I want to talk about my current read, which is The Sorrows of Young Werther by Johann von Werther, something like that. Because I want to say goth, but it's not at all goth. It is a German literature that was published in 1774, which is really cool and exciting to know. It's nice to know that I'm reading a book that was written and published at such a long time ago. It is a copy that I really much love. I love a physical book, and I do want to talk about that a little bit as well. I want to talk about the beauty of being able to hold a physical book. You know, there's different methods of reading nowadays. There's audiobooks, Kindles, you know, but I think that a physical book, especially, I'm going to be a little bit biased, but I think that especially like a paperback just feels so special and romantic and intimate. There's so much character, especially for like, I'm gonna gush about my copy of it because I love it so much. And if you could just see like the cracks, the crevices, the torn corners, and I don't know, it just gives it so much defining character and personality. Even like the sides of it, I don't know if you could really see that or if it's gonna be blurry, but I love that it's mine, you know? There's different, I've already annotated it, but I know that through time it's gonna fade, the lines are gonna fade. There's gonna be like a little bit of an echoing of that someone else read this and loved it so much, and I did, and I do, and I am, and I think that's really cool. So it's not the same with an audiobook. You can't really highlight, you can't annotate, you can't put your little notes or thoughts or emotions, have a conversation with the page, and or even with the Kindle. I mean, a Kindle, I'm pretty sure, I've never used one, but I'm pretty sure you can highlight, but it doesn't have the same feeling, you know? It's kind of like if you're gonna go journal and you use your notes app versus like going out in the woods, out in nature, and like taking out your physical like journal, taking your pen and just like writing away, whether that's stream of conscious style, whether that's like a letter format, whatever it is. Which actually, talking about letter format, this book was written in a letter format kind of style. I'm gonna show you a little bit of a few pages. Oh my gosh, difficult to, but yeah, so what that was called. So before I even start talking about that, I want to talk about that this was, at its time, like I probably already mentioned, the pioneer of romanticism, specifically German romanticism. So there's different forms of romanticism. I've gotten to know a little bit of neo-romanticism, post-romanticism, dark romanticism. I haven't delved into each of those genres quite yet, but I am excited to learn more about the writers during that time that were able to explore and expand on what that was. So currently reading German romanticism, and it's been nothing but a delight, truly. So what romanticism is, it's people, because of the name romantic, people, we tend to think that, oh, it's gonna be like about love, but really, I mean, even though it deals with love, it's more with unrequited love, which is heartbreaking, which leads to despair and sorrows, you know, like the sorrows of young Werther. And also, because it's German, I do want to just point out that even though his name it starts with a W, it's pronounced with a V. That is how German language is, I guess. And German romanticism, and it was the most popular one that was published during its time, and I think that period lasted from like it lasted from 1770 to like 1785, around there. Like I think it was like 15 to 20 years, and even in that there was subgenres within like the German romanticism, and specifically this is known to be a storm and stress genre. So that was a shorter-lived era for literature during that time, but it pretty much is when they were prioritizing emotions over reason and logic, and they're prioritizing or valuing more of like individuality over conformity, because during that time everyone was just conforming to society, you know? That was a big known thing that was seen in art, and during this time there's a rebellion against that, which is really cool, and the name is Storm and Stress, so that's also really cool to know. And the format of it, this is one of the first known works of literature that was epistolary. And what epistolary is pretty much just letters being written back and forth. So something that maybe if you read Letters to a Young Poet, that's something that comes to mind, you know, two people writing it back and forth. That's usually was the structure of it. But for this specific one, it's just Werther writing a letter, and it's him writing it to his friend William. And so now that I want to get into the plot, or at least some of the characters, Werther is he is someone that I would describe as very idealistic, such a dreamer, super sensitive. I think that if you know anything about Vincent van Gogh, or Van Gogh, I don't know how you want to pronounce it, but if you have any knowledge about him, his work, that's pretty much the way that I view Werther. He himself is a painter. He goes out to the countryside and paints and is super romantic, again, in touch with nature, wanting to be just immersed with trees and the sound of birds. But he's also a very sensitive heart, and that's very hard to navigate in the real world. As we know, like, there's many different types of personality types out there, some that can be very straightforward, bold, blunt, and not in a bad way. Maybe it's just them being honest. That's just how they appear. And they're probably themselves aren't conforming into the society norms, which is really nice to see, but it does make it harder for these people that want to be authentic and kind and lead with such great passion and ardor, but are also very hurt and wounded and soft and delicate in a way. So that is exactly how this character is, and you get to see that while he's writing his letters to his friends, of like how he views nature, how he feels when he's in nature, why he wants to be in nature forever, and like that sort of thing. I think that's something that I resonated with deeply, and reading his words, they were something that I just felt like, damn, I want to come back all the time to read his words, even if I don't come back to read the entirety. Which also, just another fact is, this isn't like, it's not even this long of a novel, so it's only, I believe, 127 pages. Let me just confirm that. 127 pages. So that's something that a lot of people can argue you can read in one sitting, you could read in one day, you could read maybe in just 2 days. Regardless, you can read it in a very short amount of time. But I would never, ever, ever recommend you to read that in just like one sitting, one day. I think that I would only recommend that, or I would understand that, if you've already read it for a first time. But as a first time reader, I don't know, I wouldn't do that. I think that this is such a beautiful thing, and because it goes from, I think, 2 years through like different seasons. It goes through different phases of his life, and they're all dated, which is a beautiful thing too. So right now I'm in September 3rd, which is actually funny because that's this week is landing on September 3rd. So that's where I'm at. And yeah, even though some, as you probably saw from just that little page, some letters are really short. They're only a couple sentences. Some letters are a paragraph, and some letters are, well, over like 2-3 pages. So it's an array, a variety of different things, but they all feel so emotionally vulnerable, and you need time to process that, you know? You need time to sit with that, to really marinate with the words, with the emotion, with the passion, with what he's saying and feeling in that time. And you yourself, as you're reading it, are getting more engrossed in those like words, and they're starting to stick with you, and those emotions you're starting to feel as well. You're not just reading it as someone that receives the letter, but you're also reading it as someone that maybe even wrote these letters or can resonate deeply with these words. And I find myself with both, you know, like there's certain letters that I'm like, oh, this is something that I would have written to my friends, to my family, or written just in like a journal entry. And some of them are like, dude, what are you doing? Why do you find yourself meddling in other people's affairs, you know? So it's kind of like, I don't know, he's a very interesting character, and I want to make another video more expanding on how I view him and why I sympathize and empathize with him, but also why I kind of want to just like grab him and be like, dude, grow up. So there's obviously like complexities, and I'm torn between like wanting to be his friend, wanting to be there to like be a source of comfort and a companion as well, but I also don't want to be someone that is just there and is enabling this kind of behavior, and is allowing someone, even though they're young, to go off on their whims, their fantasies, their desires of like, dude, you go off, you do you. None of that. I don't think that's in the long run or in the bigger picture something that's going to help someone that you care and love for. So yeah, for me, it's so far so good. There are 2 parts to the book, so there's a part 1, there's a part 2. I was able to finish part 1 not too long ago, and then part 2 I am now on. I have 20 pages left in the book, which also causes some sort of sorrows, honestly, because they're not words that I'll be reading for the first time ever again. This is like an experience that I love so much, and because of that, I do think that most of the letters feel like little desserts. Some of them feel, because they're so rich, and again, like just passion and emotion and even despair, because it's not all like bright and beautiful. Even though he wants to see the world in full saturated colors, sometimes he feels like the way that dark clouds come around and just start pouring on your parade, you know? It feels very much heavy, and it feels very much like, wow, I need to grieve with this letter that I just received or read, you know, from this friend. And I love that so much. So it's one that I would really recommend anyone that wants to get into classic literature, especially romanticism. If that is your thing, even if it's not your thing, I think it's hard for me to imagine someone that would read this and be like, not for me. Unless you're like emotionally unavailable, or you're dealing with a lot of already heavy things, then it's not a book that I would recommend for you. Because again, there is, sorrows, there's despair, there's grievance, there's so much heartache. So it is a pretty heavy book. And you could be in one letter reading like how he's having the time of his life, and then again, like a few pages later, you receive or you read another letter, and it's just him talking about how he just hates life, he doesn't want to go on, he doesn't see the purpose in it, and it's just so dramatic, but it's so entertaining and it's so humorous at times. Sometimes it's not funny, obviously. Sometimes it is very much like, oh, I feel so bad for this guy. And as you keep reading more letters, because they feel so vulnerable and so raw, you start to make a connection with this person. So you start to view him as not just a fictional character. At least for me, I didn't view him as a fictional character. Again, I saw parts of myself in him, and I do think that there's certain friends that I have that reminded me of this person. So because of that, this person, this fictional character, became so real. And yeah, I was like anxious to like get to the next letter, but I was also waiting. I was like, I wanted to treat it as like such a real life experience of like, my friend's gonna write to me, and then I'm gonna receive it, and I'm gonna read it, and then reading it, and then like processing it. What would I have said? What would I have written back? How would I respond to that? I don't know. So yeah, it's very good. It's very poetic. The way it's written is just very true to him. And again, he just reminds me of a little bit of myself, a little bit of some of my friends that I have. Definitely Van Gogh, however you want to say it. And I would definitely recommend. And if you do, I mean, I would honestly encourage you to get like a physical copy. I haven't ever really seen this, so I got this at a thrift store, and I feel very fortunate because I didn't even know about it. I got it on one of my travels when I went on like a solo trip, and I believe, and I want to say Salem, but that doesn't sound, no. It's by the coast. I can't believe I forgot the name, but I'm gonna just edit that in. And yeah, I remember I went to like a thrift store there, and I picked it up, and it was $5.99, and I was like, dude, I love, again, just seeing the cover just gave me so much joy already. So I'm like, even if it's not like the most life-changing book, which it seems that it will be like a life-changing book, even if it wasn't, I was like, dude, just having this and feeling it and knowing that it was loved by someone at one point, they gave it up to for someone else to love and care for, and that will be me, and I will not be letting it go. I will be letting my friends borrow it. You know, I would love to have people borrow it. I've done it in the past where I give it to friends, and then it becomes like a domino effect or a chain reaction where I'm like, oh my gosh, I have my friends currently reading this book, and then they're like, what, you should let me read it as well. And so then they start reading it, and then by the time it gets back to me, it has more personality, it has more character, it has more underlining, more annotation, more wording. So this is a page that I've annotated, and I actually would love to read a little excerpt. So this is just so that way you could get an idea of who Werther is. This is something that he wrote in one of his letters. So this letter was dated back in August 12th, and he was obviously writing it. He only writes to one person, which is his friend William, and this is something that he said. He says, human nature, I continued, has its limitations. It can bear joy and suffering and pain to a certain degree, but perishes when this point is passed. Here, there can therefore be no question of whether a man is strong or weak, but of whether he can endure his suffering, be it moral or physical. And I find it just as astonishing to say that a man who takes his own life is a coward, as it would be improper to call a man a coward who dies of a pernicious fever. So I butchered that. That did not sound so good, but that's pretty much a little bit of getting inside his head and his philosophies, and he views certain things, and that definitely was, again, an indicator of, I guess I don't want to say more, but I'll say it more in my second video. But yeah, hopefully this has, I guess, encouraged you to either pick up this book, specifically this book. If not picking up this book, picking up a classic, or exploring maybe like romanticism. So yeah.